Welcome back to Kris versus everybody. Let's just get to it. This is the podcast where I talk about anything and everything unedited, uncensored. I would like to say happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Hanukkah, and Happy Winter Solstice to everyone listening to the podcast. It is the holiday season episode of the show. I will be talking about my home team, Detroit Lions, and their bad coaching decisions, and something on the political realm, political educational realm, where we're talking about CRT, critical race theory, and how history isn't supposed to be comfortable. History is not supposed to be a comfortable subject. It's supposed to be a very truthful subject, whether it be good or bad. So we're going to get into it right now. First, I'm going to talk about Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell is the head coach of the Detroit Lions. He's been the head coach for 3 years, and all 3 years have been a progression in Detroit football. Okay, we came out of the Matt Patricia era, which was an era that we should not have even stepped into. I don't know why we fired Jim Caldwell. Jim Caldwell was a great coach. However, we always got kicked out of the playoffs with a 9-7, 12-4, 11-5 seasons. I don't know why you would fire somebody with that good of a record. But we got rid of him, got Matt Patricia, never had a winning season with Matt Patricia. And then we finally got Dan Campbell. Yes, of course, the first year we were 3-13. 3-13-1. Okay, the best Detroit record ever, a 3-1-3 record. But after that, we had a 9-8 record. And then we had a 12-5 record. Oh, so he's been in for 4 years. This will be his fourth year. So last year we had 12-5. We should have been 14-3, but we'll get into that on a later episode. And this year we are now 12-2. And we're going to get into those two losses in a second. First, we're going to get with the first loss against Tampa Bay. Now, I understand that Dan Campbell, his nickname is Dan Gamble. He gambles way too much in games. I understand that. And I like that about our coach. However, there's a time where you need to stop gambling. There's a time where you have to walk away. There's a time when you have to make the right decision as a coach. As a coach, you're supposed to put your team in the best position to win. Twice against Tampa Bay, he failed to do that, and we lost the game 20-16. And I'm going to get to what happened last week with the Buffalo Bills in just a second. Okay? But I want to preface this by saying that football is different than other sports. People want to blame the players for not making the right plays. People want to blame the coaches for not coaching right. I'm on the school of the coaching in football is way more important than what the players do in those certain situations. Let me tell you why. Football is a play-by-play game, which means every play, by definition, each play is independent from each other. It's not like basketball, where you're going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until there's a timeout. It's not like soccer when it's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until the first half and then the ending of the game. It's not like hockey when they're back and forth until there's a timeout. It is a play-by-play game, which means that the coach has all the power. Do this play next. Do this play. If this doesn't work, audible, do this play. And it all goes into the hands of the quarterback and the players who make the plays happen in the game. And that's what we see on the TV. However, each play is called out by the head coach or the offensive coordinator. Or if you're on defense, the defensive coordinator and the head coach. The game of American football involves a wide variety of specific plays and formations that can change from one down to the next. Coaches often call plays from the sidelines, adjusting based on the opponent's formations and strategies. So based on the opposition, the coaches tell the quarterback or the safeties or the linemen what to do in those certain situations. Now, what happened last week against Buffalo? We lost the game. All right. We lost 48-42. Now, I do admit, everybody admits this, and I concede to this, that the first half offensively for the Detroit Lions was shit. Couldn't get anything done. Buffalo's defense was trash. Our defense was depleted with injuries. That's a preface. Buffalo's defense was bad. Our defense was depleted. Now, put that aside. Look at the score, 48-42. People saying, oh, they were facing a top-tier team. They were facing the A-plus team in the NFL. No, they weren't. You were facing Josh Allen featuring the Buffalo Bills versus the Detroit Lions with a depleted defense. Nothing bad on offense, except for the David Montgomery MCL tear. We're going to talk about that in a later episode. But literally, you had two of the best teams in the NFL going at each other. Two of the best teams with bad defenses. That's why the score was 48-42. That means if your team could put up points offensively, your team was going to win the game. Had nothing to do with defense, because the defense had to win the game somehow. Somebody had to have a stop. Okay. Now we're going to go from the first quarter to the end of the game. First quarter, offense on the Buffalo Bills was amazing. Josh Allen pretty much scored 2 rushing touchdowns. We're going to get that out the way. 14-0. And then the second quarter, we came back. Then at the end of the second quarter, Buffalo scored another touchdown and a field goal. Then in the third quarter, Buffalo scored again. And then fourth quarter happens. Now, I have the play-by-play scores right here in front of me. This is the start of the fourth quarter. Start of the fourth quarter, it was 35-21. Buffalo. Now, people say, hey, Kris, you don't know what the heck you're talking about. Our defense was depleted. We needed to do what we had to do to win the game and gamble. First of all, the defense was depleted. However, the Detroit Lions are the third best fourth quarter defense in the NFL. Even with their injuries, even without Aiden Hutchinson, even without Anzalone, without Rodrigo, okay, without Melanfamu, like, they're the third best fourth quarter defense in the NFL without their starters. We did this against the Buffalo Bills. Fourth quarter starts. Surprisingly, not really surprisingly, but because we're the third best defense in the fourth quarter in the league, we stopped them coming down the field, and they scored a field goal to make it 38-21. We get the ball, take the ball down the field, and we have a 12-yard pass to Jahmyr Gibbs, which he rolls over, reaches out, touchdown. Now we're just down by 10 points, 38-28. Dan Campbell says we're going to do an onside kick with 12 minutes left in the game. Everybody in the stadium's like, what the fuck is this guy doing? I'm on my couch, livid, heart racing, pacing back and forth, walking around the kitchen, dining room, office. I went back to my room. I was like, why is he doing this? Kicking team of an onside kick has a 5% chance of winning the onside kick. So why the hell would you do it? And people on my Facebook page, I'm not going to name any names, but a lot of people said, hey, Kris, our defense is trash. Our defense was going through changes. Our defense was depleted. We needed to go for the onside kick because Dan Campbell doesn't trust his defense. I would like to counter that argument by saying, if they can't stop Buffalo Bills from their 20, what makes you think you can stop it on our side of the field with a shorter field to go to? Which happened. They kicked the onside kick. The guy luckily tapped it forward, caught it, and ran and got tackled at the 5-yard line, the Lions' 5-yard line. Next play, they score a touchdown. 45-28. So you score with Jahmyr Gibbs to make it 10 points. You get the momentum back in the fourth quarter. There are so many teams who have won the game down 10 in the fourth quarter without doing all this BS onside kick, BS, like 38-28. Onside kick fails. Next play, you get scored on. So now they scored 10 points. They literally scored 10 points in 3 minutes, basically. Now you're really playing catch up. Oh, Kris, the defense was depleted. They stopped them again. They stopped them. But guess what? The defense was messed up. So they got down the field again, all the way down. And then they had to punt the ball because we stopped them. Field goal, punt. Field goal, punt. When they kicked it to the other side of the field. Field goal and a punt. That's 3 points. Meanwhile, we score. Jahmyr Gibbs, make it 10-10. Score the onside kick. Don't get it. They take it to the 5-yard line. Next play, they score a touchdown. Then we score a touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs, 1 yard. And then they score a field goal because we stopped them again with 2 minutes, right before the 2-minute warning, 2 minutes, 3 seconds. So without the onside kick, ladies and gentlemen, mathematically, without those 7 points, they would have had 6 points. I'm sorry, without 13 points because they had a touchdown. Without the touchdown after the onside kick, they would have had 6 points instead of 13. I'm saying this to say that the last drive for the game was with the Lions. The Lions had the ball in their hands at the 3-yard line. They throw it to Jamison Williams, with 12 seconds left to make it 42-48. Ladies and gentlemen, if they don't score that touchdown after the fucking onside kick with 12 minutes left, it would have been 42-41. Dan Campbell screwed the city of Detroit out of another win. And I'm going to leave it at that. No, I'm not. Also, if you don't recover the onside kick, the other team gets the ball deep inside of your field, deep down inside of your zone, which they did. They scored, and they won the game because they had more points than us. Dan Campbell put all the chips on double green zeros and lost. Why? Why do we keep going through this? We should be 14-0. It just keeps happening to Detroit. Like, people's like, oh, that's my coach. I love my coach. You should be talking about Dan Campbell like that. I talk about him not to belittle him. This is constructive criticism. Stop gambling games away. Stop doing this. There's only certain times you should gamble and certain times you shouldn't gamble. Like 12 minutes in the fourth quarter. Kick the ball down the field and let your defense stop them. Clearly in the fourth quarter, they did. They didn't score. The only time they scored a touchdown in the fourth quarter is when you did an onside kick with 12 minutes left. They tipped it forward, caught it, ran to the 5. Luckily, they were tackled at the 5-yard line. Or you would have looked real stupid. You just look stupid. Not real stupid. You just look stupid. I'm looking at the fourth quarter. Field goal by Buffalo. Touchdown by Jahmyr Gibbs. Then you do the onside kick, 5 yards down the field, tackle. Then they score another touchdown. Then we score a touchdown. Then they punt. Then we punt. Then they score a field goal. And then we score the touchdown. That would have won the game if you didn't do the damn onside kick with 12 minutes left in the fourth quarter. That's all I got to say on that. Dan Campbell needs to stop gambling games away. I hope they win today. I'm doing this as the game is about to start in Chicago. I hope they win this game. I hope they don't gamble it away, because last time on Thanksgiving, they almost lost because of stupid decisions and defensive depletions. But that's not really my fault, his fault, or the player's fault. They just got injured. You can't really help that. But Chicago almost won that game. If they would have used their timeout, they would have won. But I'm just putting that out there. Dan Campbell has to stop gambling games away. But the last thing I'm going to say about this is saying that have faith in your team. He literally said he has zero faith in his defense. Zero. That's not what coaching good is. That's not what good coaching is. Good coaching is assuring both teams and the fans that the team can finish a football game. An onside kick with 12 minutes left when you're down 10 after you just scored a touchdown is ridiculous. Ridiculous. And because they did that, they had to do another onside kick after they scored with 12 seconds left after J-Mo scored. There's no excuse. No excuse whatsoever. You can't have an excuse for this. However, we are having a great season. I am glad for this season. Last season was great. Even the 9-8 season was great. The 3-13 season was a joy to watch. Because I'm a Detroit Lions fan. I will watch them if they win or lose. Okay. These two games are our biggest failures. And it's because we gamble too much. Failure is the best teacher. Okay. Failure can be one of life's greatest teachers, offering invaluable lessons and personal growth opportunities. Here are some key lessons failure often imparts. I'm talking about the Lions, and also personal. And if you listen to this and you're thinking about failure isn't the last step in anything. If you fail at something, it's a great teacher to further things in life. You must learn how to fail in order to succeed. That's my quote for today. Here's some key lessons failure imparts. So number one is resilience and perseverance. Okay. Failure teaches us how to bounce back, adapt, and keep moving forward despite setbacks. It builds mental toughness. Number two, self-awareness. It provides a mirror to your thoughts and weaknesses, helping you understand yourself better and where improvement is needed. Humility. Experiencing failure can be humbling, reminding you that growth often requires struggle and learning from others. Learn from others, Dan Campbell. Would Bill Belichick go for an onside kick with 12 minutes left? Fuck no. He wouldn't do that. The value of preparation. Failure highlights gaps in planning, knowledge, or execution, encouraging better preparation and strategy for next time. Risk management. It teaches you to assess and manage risks more effectively, making future endeavors more calculated and informed. Now, the Detroit Lions will probably do better in the first quarter and not mess up, allowing the dominoes to happen for Dan Campbell to gamble like that. Innovation and creativity. Failure pushes you to think outside the box, experiment, and find alternative approaches. Many breakthroughs stem from previous failures. The importance of support systems. Difficult times reveal who supports and believes in you, underscoring the value of a strong network. The temporary nature of setbacks. Failure demonstrates that no setback is permanent if you learn to take action to move forward. You don't have to let the failure keep you down. If you do let it keep you down, the failure kept you down. If you want to succeed, you got to know that, hey, I failed, I messed up. I'm going to try this again with a different approach, different preparation, and then hopefully it gets through. Clarity about goals. Sometimes failure clarifies whether a goal is worth pursuing or if adjustments are necessary to align with your values. And number 10, growth over perfection. It encourages a mindset focused on improvement and learning rather than fear of making mistakes. If you always fear making mistakes, you'll never improve or get better. If you fear making mistakes, you'll never grow. You'll never do anything. You'll never succeed. Most billionaires are billionaires because they stepped out on faith. They made a huge risk and it worked. Okay? Failure, when approached constructively, isn't the opposite of success, but a stepping stone towards it. Okay? I'm going to go through a few examples of success stories. Michael Jordan was denied on his high school varsity basketball team before becoming a 6-time NBA world champion, gold medal winner, and owner of an NBA franchise. J.K. Rowling received 12 rejections before publishing the first Harry Potter book. Henry Ford went bankrupt before starting the Ford Motor Company. Jennifer Hudson lost American Idol, but still became a movie star and a successful music artist, and now a successful talk show host. Lady Gaga was dropped from Def Jam Records after 3 months, but went on to become a multi-millionaire and a huge record artist. Steve Jobs was fired from Apple, the company he started. Then he came back, laid the blueprint for today's $3.5 trillion company. Rest in peace, Steve Jobs. Bill Gates dropped out of Harvard to create Microsoft. Oprah Winfrey was fired from her news anchor job in Baltimore before becoming a multi-billion-dollar media mogul. And finally, Steven Spielberg had horrible grades in high school, didn't get into the college he wanted to, but still had the drive and hunger it took to make it big in Hollywood. He's one of the most known directors of all time. Failure is simply the opportunity to build again, this time more intelligently, said Henry Ford. Giving up is the only sure way to fail. Failure should be our teacher, not our undertaker. Failure is delay, not defeat. It is temporary detours. It's not a dead end. Failure is something we can avoid only by saying nothing, doing nothing, and being nothing. I'm going to say that again for the people in the back. Failure is something we can avoid by only saying nothing, doing nothing, and being nothing. I'm going to say it one more time. Failure is something we can avoid only by saying nothing, doing nothing, and being nothing, which means if you don't get your ass up off that couch and do something with your life, you will be a failure. You can be like, oh my gosh, I should have did that 10 years ago. Well, if you should have did it 10 years ago, get off your ass right now and go do it now. Go do it. Go be somebody. Go be somebody. And that's all I got to say about the Detroit Lions and the lessons of failure. Our failures are going to teach us what we have to do next time to become the Super Bowl champions that we deserve to be. That the city of Detroit has waited so long. They waited 58 years. 58 years for a Super Bowl championship. We are ready. And hopefully we win one this year. All right. Now I'm going to talk about how people on the right side of the political spectrum are freaking out by the acronym CRT, which is critical race theory. Again, I talked about this earlier in an earlier episode, but I'm just going to reiterate it. CRT is critical race theory, which is a Harvard Law program, which pretty much teaches that, hey, we're looking at laws in America based on when they were made, why they were made, what happens when they were enacted, and the consequences of the enactment of those laws. In the United States of America, and this is from Harvard Law School, with all the research and all the stuff that has been put forth in history, facts, they have determined at Harvard Law School, as well as many other law programs across the country and around the world, that American law in the United States of America, most laws enacted were based on the facts and the misinformation by a lot of people, a combination of both, that these laws will be made to put some people more better in life and to keep most people down. Okay? Law school, which means you have to know the Bill of Rights. The First Amendment of the Constitution. Okay? Freedom of the press, freedom of speech, blah, 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 blah. They did not mean that for Native Americans, for Black people, for women. It was only the Anglo-Saxon white male in America. Women didn't get a say-so in this country legally until 1920. The country was founded in 1776. Women didn't get a right to vote until 1920. The Civil Rights Act wasn't enacted until 1965, which means before 1965, Black people in this country were treated like shit. Socially, physically, with nooses and lynching, spitting in the face, dogs sicked on them, hoses sprayed at them, slavery, Jim Crow laws, redlining, restrictive covenants, GI Bills that weren't given to Black people when they came back. There's a lot of stuff that happened in America that we need to talk about so we can better ourselves as a people, as a civilized American people in America. And I did say a few episodes ago, I think I did it the last episode, that there are only, I think there's only 4 or 5 Black Republican congressmen. And they're all males, by the way. Okay. It's crazy that the Republican Party has only put up Sarah Palin as a vice president, and no other female Republican has came up to be president of the United States, because they know that right-wing conservative people don't want women controlling them. And that's the word. That's the word right there. That's the verb right there. They don't want them controlling them. The president doesn't control anybody. He or she is the leader of the free world, which means they have to listen to you. Somehow the right-wing conservatives, right-wing Republicans, right-wing MAGAs have messed up their brains to think like, hey, the president controls everything. The president is the ruler of the world. No. In a democratic society, in a democratic republic like the United States, the president, vice president, Congress, they listen to the people. What do the people want? Once the people and the people higher up are split, and then the people up top control what the other people in the country do, that becomes a dictatorship and a monarchy. You understand where I'm going with this? Right-wing people. I know the left wing and the moderate people understand what I'm talking about. Okay? I know they understand. It's the weirdos on the right who voted for Donald Trump the MAGAs. I'm not saying all Republicans do this, but the MAGAs. And some people who don't understand what CRT stands for, like Ron DeSantis, Marco Rubio, Tim Scott, Nikki Haley, those people. Like, all what we're trying to do in America is not say, hey, let's put CRT into classrooms. We're saying we're taking the blueprint of what CRT has done in a college setting. We're saying that, hey, this is the law. This is what happened before the law was enacted. This is when it was enacted. And this is what happened after it was enacted. And what happened? Did it improve life for people, or did it make life worse based on the different laws that were presented in the classroom at Harvard Law School? That's what CRT is. Now, what we're saying, putting CRT into classrooms, is putting that blueprint into teaching history. Like saying, hey, the Louisiana Purchase happened in 1803. Before then, the United States was only as far as probably the Mississippi River. After that, the French gave the United States the land, which is mostly Native American groups. After they bought the land, the United States pretty much killed everybody, moved everybody, wiped everybody out. In later years, not in the 1803, but later, from 1803 on to probably the 1840s. It was called the Trail of Tears, Manifest Destiny. People say, "Oh, it was Manifest Destiny. It was our God. It was our God-given right to take this land." Like, no, you killed people, you slaughtered people, and the effects of that are lingering still today in 2024, where you have reservations in Oklahoma where Native Americans can't even leave without having a certain, status. Or the reservations where people don't have running water. Reservations where people don't have health insurance. Places where people's look and say, hey, that looks great for the Keystone Pipeline to go through. Hold on. You decimate these people's lands, and then 200 years later, you want to put a Keystone Pipeline through it because you don't want to ruin your land? Oh, America, we got some work to do. But before we talk about that, we're going to talk about, well, I'm a Black American, so I'm going to talk about stuff that happened with us. Learning history is probably the best subject socially that you should know to pass on to future generations. The only reason why racism still exists in America is because people like to perpetuate the idea and the theories of racism to the next generation. Throughout history, numerous Black communities have been destroyed due to racially motivated violence and destruction. I will say, I'm going to start off with the racially motivated destruction. And this is another lesson from a CRT history curriculum. And this is how I would teach history. Teaching that history based on experiences and based on how children and students should take it. I'm not saying that you should tell 6-year-olds that Christopher Columbus raped people to a 6-year-old. Okay. I will continue the lesson of 1492, Columbus set the ocean blue. Didn't go to America. He went down to the Caribbean. He was on his quest for gold. He found all the sugar cane, all this other stuff, blah, 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 blah. Had slaves. This, that, and the third. 1492, Columbus set the ocean blue. 6-year-old. Okay. Then probably 5th grade, middle school, you should tell him that, hey, he didn't actually go to America. He went down to the Caribbean. Then in high school, you should go over the gritty details of what Christopher Columbus did, as well as other people in history. High school should be that place before you move on, because most people don't go to they don't go to higher education after high school. Some people just go from high school to the real world, which is okay. But you can't go into the real world thinking that everything was hunky dory in America. It wasn't. So, racially motivated destruction. In the urban planning community, in history community, we call this the urban renewal era, where a lot of towns, well, a lot of big cities in America, including Detroit, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, Memphis, Atlanta, DC, Philadelphia, they were making the cities look better. Okay. Now, before the 1940s and 1950s and 1930s, majority of the Black population lived in the South. 1930s, 1940s happened, the Great Migration, the second Great Migration happens. First one was in the right after slavery. And then the second Great Migration happens in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, from the South to the West and the North and the Northeast. That's why I see a lot of ethnic enclaves of Black people in Cleveland, Detroit, Chicago, New York City, Philadelphia, DC, St. Louis, and Los Angeles, Houston. Okay? When all these people came, they could only afford, I will say that first, they can only afford to live in the rougher places in the city because they didn't have a lot of money. Most, like 99% of Black people coming from the South, did not have the money to move into the better neighborhoods of the city. Now, that was part of the reason why they were in those parts of the city. The other part is that politicians did not want Black and brown people to mix, to intertwine with the white people of the city. Okay? And history has showed us that when they did intertwine initially, there would be race riots, there would be burnings, there would be lynchings, and there would be forced police escorts of Black people, Blacks, Jews, and brown people from those neighborhoods. So what did they do in those Black, brown, and Jew neighborhoods? They would redline, they would district them off to make sure that the Blacks, Browns, and Jews stayed where they were supposed to be. And that's why you have a lot of ethnic neighborhoods in some of these cities like Los Angeles, New York, Detroit, Chicago, of where you only see Hispanics in one neighborhood. When you see the Jews have a neighborhood, the Blacks have a neighborhood, and the whites have a neighborhood. That all changed late 50s, 60s, and 70s when all the white people left the cities for the newly suburbs, which were also redlined and had restrictive covenants against Black, brown, and Jewish people. So from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, all the cities in the United States were majority, I can't speak today. Most of those cities were majority Black and brown and Jew. Or, because white people say, oh, the whites had divisions too. Yes, they did. And along with the Black, brown, and Jew people, they were Irish, they were Italian, a lot of Italians in New York, in Chicago. And of course, the Eastern Europeans later, probably the 50s, 60s, 70s, okay? The Russians and the Eastern Europeans came during that migration from Europe. Okay? So rough time in cities from like the late 60s to the early 90s. So we're going to go back to the 40s, 50s, and 60s with the Great Migration. All these former, maybe first or second generations away from slavery, they came to Detroit, Chicago, New York. Now, urban renewal projects were projects from the city, top down, from City Hall, City Council, even higher than that. The state government and the federal government wanted to build freeways and parkway system to make the city more accessible to the newly made suburbs where the white people were moving to. White people moved out, tax base moved, property taxes dwindled, cities became more deteriorated, and that's where the Black people moved to. Now, the renewal projects were planning to demolish or divide those communities by building freeways, some 6 lanes across, some 10 lanes across, but they would displace people. They would displace a lot of people. Example would be Pole Town here in Detroit. They would displace them to build I-94 and to build the new GM factory, which is now not even 10% of what it used to be. Okay. Another example would be Freemanstown in Houston. A thriving Black community was dismantled through urban renewal projects and highway construction, displacing many Black residents. Irishtown Bend, in Cleveland, was a Black neighborhood destroyed by urban renewal projects, displacing families and erasing local businesses. Bruce's Beach in California, right outside Los Angeles, in 1924, a Black-owned beach resort in Manhattan Beach was taken through eminent domain. Okay, this is the federal government doing this. A Black-owned beach resort in Manhattan Beach was taken under eminent domain under the pretense of public use, but was left unused for decades until the late 1960s and 70s when they finally built something there. This is the American history, everybody. There's no whitewashing. There's no Barneyifying this. There's no Sesame Streeting American history. Hobson City, Alabama, one of Alabama's first incorporated Black towns, was targeted by systemic disenfranchisement and economic sabotage, causing its decline. Now, this is not the first time that the federal and state governments systemically disenfranchised cities based on who ran them and who was being economically flourished in that city. We've seen this before when Black mayors are elected. Chicago, Detroit, New York, Los Angeles, New Orleans, Atlanta, Memphis. We've seen this happen. Whenever a Black mayor comes, the federal government, state government, systemically disenfranchise it, making news stories like, oh, there's a Black mayor, it's going to mess up. But once a white mayor comes in after the Black mayor, oh, stuff starts happening. I'm not saying it happened in Detroit. I'm not saying it happened in Detroit, but it happened in Detroit in 2014. I'm not saying this happened in the 50s, 60s, 70s. This happened in 2014. And I'll leave it at that. We're going to go through some racially motivated violence. Rosewood, Florida, 1923, also known as the Rosewood Massacre. A prosperous Black town was destroyed by white mobs after false accusations of assault against a Black man. Homes, businesses, and lives were lost. Greenwood District, Tulsa, Oklahoma, also known as the Tulsa Race Massacre or the destruction of Black Wall Street. White mobs, jealous about Black prosperity and against racial integration, killed up to 300 Black residents and destroying over 1,200 homes and businesses. Like I said, once Black people left the South and moved to other towns out west, up north, in the Northeast, the areas where Black and whites intermingled, there was a lot of tensions, there was a lot of race riots, and there was a lot of violence against Black people. And that is our history, everybody. East St. Louis, 1917, also known as the East St. Louis Massacre. White mobs attacked Black workers and their families, killing over 100 Black residents and destroyed the neighborhood. And the effects are still shown today, as East St. Louis is not the most friendly part of Illinois. Springfield, Illinois. Let's go up north to Springfield, Illinois. 1908, when white mobs attacked Black-owned homes and businesses, destroying parts of the community. This massacre led to the formation of the NAACP. So yeah, whenever someone says what started the NAACP, look up Springfield, Illinois. The Springfield, Illinois race riot. I can't speak today. The waste riot, like Elmer Fudd. And last, we have Greenwood, South Carolina, 1898. Greenwood, South Carolina was destroyed when a white resident accused the city of being too successful. Like I said, once black people get some money and become successful, white people want to take them down. So a white resident accused the city of being too successful, and then they used violence and economic tactics to erase it. These are historical facts. They cannot be disproven. They cannot be debunked. These are facts that happen in America. And when you tell people that, oh, I don't want my child learning this, you are part of the problem. Just because black people get some money and become great at something doesn't mean you have to stop it. Maybe you should join the black people. Maybe you could be successful too. It's a thought. It's another way to say that learning history is not supposed to make you feel comfortable. It's not supposed to make you feel comfortable. If history makes you comfortable, you are out of this. You are just not human. I'll give you a huge example. Watch somebody say something bad about the Holocaust. Watch somebody say something bad about slavery in the same room. Some people be like, "Oh, slavery happened a long time ago. Let's not talk about this. We're black people. You guys are good now." No. I said this in the other episode too. If we can talk about the Holocaust as being a very bad event, we need to talk and the stuff after that and the progressions after that. We have to talk about slavery and the progressions after that too. Learning's not supposed to be comfortable. We're forced to watch people get thrown in ovens, in camps, in Auschwitz. You don't see the same people forcing people to watch people forced on boats and watch people jump from boats from Africa to either Brazil, the Caribbean, or Georgia. You don't see that. You won't see it. Okay? Learning is not supposed to be comfortable when it comes to history. And that's what the CRT blueprint is supposed to be when we talk about history. Few examples. I already talked about it. We talked about the Holocaust, where millions of not just Jews, but Jews, black people, brown people, gay people were killed under the name of the Aryan race, under the name of Adolf Hitler in the Nazi Party of Germany from 1933 to 1945. That is an event that happened and should not be erased from history. However, we do have history before that where we've had a transatlantic slave trade from the 1400s until this is something that we need to listen to. Listen to what I'm about to say. From the 1400s till I believe it was 1808 when it was deemed illegal worldwide. The transatlantic slave trade was deemed illegal in 1808. And when is Juneteenth? Juneteenth is June 19th, 1865. June 19th, 1865. Which means 57 years after slavery in the transatlantic slave trade was deemed illegal by the world as at large. This transatlantic slave trade was illegal. 57 years later, America finally woke up and said, hey, this is bad. Transatlantic slave trade was horrible. The Armenian genocide, which Turkey, the country of Turkey, wants to erase from history because they eradicated millions of Armenians in that area. The Trail of Tears, I just talked about this earlier. Don't call it manifest destiny. Americans killed the native people of this country. No other way to put it. Apartheid South Africa. Apartheid in Israel. I know a lot of people don't want to talk about that nowadays because of the polarization of Israel and Palestine. The Japanese internment camps. It didn't matter if you were from Japan or a citizen born here and had Japanese ancestry. You were put in a camp during World War II. The Cambodian genocide. The Puerto Rican bombings by Americans. The Rwandan genocide. European colonialism at large. Like everywhere. Look it up. India, Pakistan, and their whole conundrum and war there, back and forth. The Tuskegee syphilis study. Please look that up. China's Great Leap Forward. Stalin's Great Purge. King Leopold's II's Congo. The 9/11 attacks. The Jonestown Massacre. The Haitian Revolution. Women in America pre-1920. Okay? Learning history is not supposed to be comfortable. Bloody Sunday in Northern Ireland. The Philadelphia bombing of 1985. 1985. Like I said earlier, the Black Wall Street attack in 1921 in Tulsa, Oklahoma. The true story of Christopher Columbus, like I said earlier. The true story of Jim Crow laws. Canada's mistreatment of black people, because they do mistreat black people up there. It's not different than here. And of course, this is probably the most important event in history when it comes to Africa. It is the Berlin Conference of 1881. Look it up. You will be surprised of what you find. All these events, though very distressing and very depressing, are critical in understanding the complexities of human history, the consequences of conflict and oppression, and the importance of recognizing and addressing historical injustices. If you don't learn these things, you are doomed to repeat them. Now, a lot of people on the right are saying, oh, I don't want my kid to think that he's better than him, or I don't want black people saying that they can talk to my white child back. That's not what we want either. That's not what we want. What the teacher in that classroom has to do is do a disclaimer, say, hey, this happened a long time ago in this country or anywhere in the world, whatever they're talking about. As a teacher, they're supposed to have the students be like, hey, we're reading this in a historical lens. And from the historical lens, can we recognize and address these historical injustices today by saying, hey, I'm not going to do this to you because we are equal. And equity and equality in this country is important for us and the next generation. My generation had the first black president. My daughter's generation might have the first female president. It might be that long before we have another candidate for female president, okay? And I'm going to go back to that topic of women in America pre-1920. From 1920 onward, women have created leaps and bounds progression forward. We now have female CEOs. We've had a woman run for vice president. We've had two women go for vice president, Sarah Palin and Kamala Harris. We've had Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris run for president of the United States. We've had a black president. We've had a president with no political experience whatsoever run 3 times, won twice, in Donald Trump, become president of the United States. We have made progression in this country. The only question is, are we going to be that country in America that repeats its mistakes because we're not teaching the right history? And the right history is all the history the right way, with the blueprint of CRT, understanding what the law is, what history is, the events, and what happened before, during, and after. And what can we do to reverse the bad, if anything bad happens, based on that event in history. Okay. Understanding cause and effect, learning from our mistakes, building empathy and cultural awareness, understanding your duty as a current and future citizen of this world, encouraging critical thinking, inspiring change and progress. That's one thing that teachers want to impart on the next generation. A lot of people don't know how to think critically. You can't think critically when you just say 1492 Columbus sailed the ocean blue. You can't think critically when you say George Washington chopped down the cherry tree. You can't think critically when you say Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. You can't think critically that way. You have to think critically. History is a roadmap of human existence. It informs our understanding of the present and helps us navigate future challenges. It fastens a deeper connection to humanity as a whole. That's all we want. That's all CRT does. Okay? A deeper connection to humanity. We want to right the wrongs. We can't right the wrongs if we keep the wrongs in place and shove them under the rug. And that's all I wanted to say today. Happy holidays, everybody. Merry Christmas. I hope everybody has a great holiday, great New Year. We'll be back next year, starting after Martin Luther King Inauguration Day. I will have my new show coming up, new episodes of Crisscross Corner starting on January 1st. So please tune into that. And I hope everybody has a great time off. If you have time off, if you don't, sucks to be you. See y'all next time. Peace.